Albert Einstein's life was full of contradictions. He was a brilliant physicist but had serious problems in school. Although he became a world-famous scientist and symbol of German science, he had to leave Germany because of Nazi persecution. Even though he supported peace, he indirectly helped in the creation of the atomic bomb. Einstein made several major discoveries and won the Nobel Prize for his work in optics. But most people know him mainly for his theory of relativity. Albert Einstein was born on March 14, 1879, in Ulm, in the Kingdom of Württemberg, part of the German Empire. His family was Jewish but not strictly religious. His father, Hermann Einstein, was an engineer and salesman who later co-founded a company that manufactured electrical equipment. His mother, Pauline Koch Einstein, came from a well-to-do family and had a strong interest in music and the arts. Albert had one sister, Maria, who was 2 years younger and with whom he remained close throughout his life. In 1880, when Albert was just 1 year old, the family moved to Munich. There, Hermann and his brother Jacob started an electrical engineering company named Elektrotechnische Fabrik J. Einstein & C. The family lived in a middle-class neighborhood, and Pauline encouraged Albert's early interest in music. She played the piano, and music became a lifelong passion for him. Albert's childhood was marked by a quiet and reflective nature. While he was physically healthy, he developed slowly in some areas. For example, he began speaking late, which initially worried his parents. As a baby, he had an unusually large head, which worried his mother. She feared he might be deformed. By the age of 3, Albert still hadn't spoken a single word, and his parents began to think he was mentally delayed. So, they were shocked when one day he suddenly started speaking with the vocabulary of an adult. From an early age, Einstein quietly observed and analyzed everything around him. He rarely shared his thoughts, but often noticed things other children didn't even think about, an early sign of his scientific mindset. At school, Albert was quiet and withdrawn, which made him a target for teasing. Teachers saw him as lazy, slow, and not very capable. One German teacher even told him, "You'll never amount to anything, Einstein." Despite this, the poor student loved reading science books and learning on his own. One day, at the beginning of the school year, he found a textbook on Euclidean geometry. He became so fascinated by it that he taught himself the entire subject in one sitting. During his university years, self-education became Albert Einstein's favorite learning method. As an introvert, he eagerly read scientific and philosophical books, often diving deeply into topics like magnetism, light, and electricity. Books such as popular books on natural science by Aaron Bernstein and Cosmos by Alexander von Humboldt didn't just replace boring school lessons, they had a major influence on his future scientific interests. Bernstein's multi-volume work introduced readers to key scientific discoveries and methods. Although it was a difficult book for a school-aged child, 10-year-old Einstein read it without taking a breath, fascinated by the experiments in natural forces, magnetism, light, electricity. It was through this book that Einstein first encountered the problem of the speed of light. Even earlier, when Einstein was still a small boy, his father showed him a compass. He was amazed that the needle always pointed in the same direction, no matter how the compass was turned. This led Albert to realize that some invisible force must be acting on it. At age 11, Einstein entered a prestigious school in Munich called the Gymnasium. The strict discipline that reminded him of the military. Teachers were authoritarian and demanded complete obedience. Albert hated tyranny and group activities, and the instructors, who would line students up like soldiers with whips in hand, filled him with disgust. At 15, after his father's business failed, the family moved to a small town near Milan, Italy. Albert initially stayed behind in Munich to finish his education. However, he too had strong reasons to leave. He despised the gymnasium and wanted to avoid the military service that was mandatory in Germany from the age of 16, so 1 year before graduation and after his family's departure, he dropped out and joined his family in Italy. His parents were surprised, but Albert assured them he would prepare on his own for entrance into the Zurich Polytechnic Institute. At the time, Einstein dreamed of becoming an engineer. At 16, Albert Einstein tried to enter the Zurich Polytechnic Institute but failed the entrance exam. However, the examiners were impressed by his strong knowledge of math and natural sciences. They promised to admit him the following year without further exams, based solely on his high school graduation grades. This is how Albert ended up at the cantonal school in the Swiss town of Aarau. One of the first things that struck him there was the atmosphere of freedom and democracy. Unlike the strict discipline in German schools, Swiss teachers treated students like equals. During this period, Albert experienced his first romantic feelings for Marie Wintler, the daughter of one of his teachers. The open and friendly environment softened his reserved nature, and Albert began to dream more deeply. He famously wondered, what if we could travel at the speed of light? Student life in Zurich and Europe cafes were not just social spots or business meetings but important cultural hubs. In Zurich, the trendy Café Metropole, a place reportedly visited by Lenin, became an informal club for students of the Polytechnic Institute. They could borrow lecture notes, share ideas, prepare for exams, or relax here. Albert Einstein and fellow student Mileva Marić were regular visitors. When he lived in Prague from April 1911 to July 1912, he regularly visited Café Louvre, a famous intellectual cafe. He did indeed meet with Jewish intellectuals, including Hugo Bergman and others. Friends recalled that Einstein always ordered a coffee and sausages. Whether in Bern, Prague, or Berlin, Einstein loved café life. During his happy Bern years, he regularly gathered in a cafe with a small group of friends to form a philosophy club they called the Olympia Academy. These meetings would become a vital part of his intellectual journey. This was the period when he started practicing his famous thought experiments, which later led to major scientific breakthroughs. At 17, Einstein decided to dedicate his life to physics. In 1896, he entered the prestigious Zurich Polytechnic. But despite the school's reputation and modern labs, Albert was disappointed. Many professors weren't keeping up with recent scientific developments. Einstein often skipped lectures and spent lab sessions reading scientific journals with the latest theories. While studying at the Polytechnic Institute, Albert met his future wife. The talented Serbian student Mileva Marić was the only woman among all the students. Their shared scientific interests quickly drew the two closer. In Mileva, Einstein found a kindred spirit. When I marry the woman I love, we will do science together. I don't want to waste time with ignorant and uneducated people, Albert wrote to his beloved. Albert's parents opposed the marriage. This woman is always reading clever books. She doesn't know how to cook or mend shoes, grumbled Einstein's mother, who never came to terms with her son's marriage to Mileva. Mileva failed her final exams at first, and Albert struggled with serious financial difficulties for quite some time. After graduating from the Zurich Polytechnic Institute in 1900 with a teaching diploma in physics, Einstein struggled to find an academic position. For 2 years, he survived by tutoring and temporary jobs while continuing to develop his scientific ideas independently. Even his first attempt to defend a doctoral dissertation failed. During this time, Einstein's keen interest in the philosophy of science grew. He was especially influenced by the works of Ernst Mach, David Hume, and Henri Poincaré, which shaped his thinking about the nature of knowledge and reality. In his third year, he earned top marks in geometry and physics, and in the fourth year, he maintained consistent performance across most subjects. Einstein spent a lot of time in cafes, where he held deep discussions with friends about the works of Ernst Mach, David Hume, Henri Poincaré, Spinoza, and Helmholtz. In 1901, the couple had a daughter, Liesel, born out of wedlock while Einstein was unemployed. There is a hypothesis that, in addition to 2 sons from his marriage to Mileva, Einstein may have had an illegitimate daughter. 2 years before their marriage, Mileva became pregnant. At that time, Albert was unemployed and unable to support a family, and his parents opposed their marriage. No birth records of the child have been preserved, but it is believed that Mileva gave birth to a girl away from Switzerland, at her parents' home. It is unknown whether Einstein ever saw his daughter. According to one version, Mileva and Albert's illegitimate daughter was adopted by a wealthy family. Some sources suggest that later on, Einstein corresponded with his daughter. In any case, protecting the privacy of his personal life, Einstein ordered his archives to be sealed after his death. Finally, in 1902, thanks to the help of friends, Einstein got a position as a technical expert at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. 6 months later, Mileva earned her diploma, and the two were married. In 1902, Albert Einstein secured a job at the Swiss Patent Office, a position that offered both social status and a decent salary. 1 year after his marriage, the couple welcomed their first child, Hans Albert. He would later become a prominent civil engineer and professor in the United States, continuing the family's scientific tradition. Later in life, Einstein would recall his years in Bern as the happiest and most stable period of his life. At the patent office, his main task was to review and assess patent applications for new inventions. Since analyzing technical descriptions often took no more than 10 minutes, Einstein had plenty of spare time to focus on his scientific work. When asked where his laboratory was, he famously replied, "All I need for a thought experiment is a pen and a piece of paper." Einstein often used thought experiments instead of physical equipment, which became his signature method. He co-founded the Olympia Academy with Maurice Solovine and Conrad Habich, an informal group for discussing science and philosophy. 1905 is called Einstein's Annus Mirabilis in science. In just about 100 days, he published 3 groundbreaking papers. First came his work on molecular physics. Then, he introduced the theory of the photoelectric effect. And finally, the revolutionary theory of relativity. At first, the scientific community barely noticed it. But shortly after, Einstein received his first serious response from Berlin. It read, "There are a few parts of your theory I do not understand. Could you kindly explain them?" The letter was from none other than the respected physicist Max Planck. These 3 papers, on Brownian motion, the photoelectric effect, and special relativity, not only reshaped physics but also laid the foundation for quantum mechanics and modern cosmology. His 4th paper that year introduced the famous equation E equals mc squared, which revealed the deep relationship between mass and energy. It was Max Planck who first introduced Albert Einstein's name to the global scientific community. He boldly declared that the only constant in nature is the speed of light in a vacuum, and that time and space are relative. This daring claim directly challenged Newton's laws, which had long been regarded as the absolute foundation of physics. Scientists were baffled. How could such a revolutionary discovery come not from a world-famous physicist, but from an unknown patent clerk, not even 26 years old? Just 4 years after the publication of his papers, Einstein was appointed professor of theoretical physics at the University of Zurich. Throughout his academic life, Einstein would also become a professor at the universities of Zurich, Prague, Berlin, and later, at the prestigious Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. Before Einstein, physics had no such concepts as curved space and time. Einstein believed that all planets cause a distortion in space. Therefore, light rays passing near such distortion should bend as they travel. What was missing for the complete triumph of theoretical thought was its practical confirmation. The difficulty lay in the fact that the necessary observations could only be made during a total solar eclipse. That opportunity finally came in 1919. Albert Einstein became the most popular scientist of his era. Lecture halls where he spoke were packed. In February 1919, Einstein divorced Mileva Marique. Their relationship had begun to deteriorate as early as 1911, when Einstein became a professor at the German University in Prague. Unwilling to live in a foreign country, Mileva returned to Zurich with their children. Albert, meanwhile, met his cousin Elsa in Germany and fell in love. They married 4 months after his divorce. At the time, Albert was 40 years old, and Elsa was 43. As a famous scientist, he traveled the world, and Elsa always accompanied him. In 1921, Einstein was awarded the Nobel Prize. Interestingly, the prestigious honor was not given for his widely discussed theory of relativity, but for his discovery of the photoelectric effect. Einstein, who received the news with modesty, gave the monetary part of the prize to his first wife, Mileva, in memory of their youthful dream to win the Nobel together. He began receiving invitations from universities all over the world. The scientist traveled across Europe, America, Latin America, and Asia. His numerous trips served not only scientific purposes but also social and political ones. As the first representative of German science to speak in Paris after the war, he accepted the French invitation in the interest of mutual understanding between the 2 nations. In 1923, Einstein visited Japan, where he was met with an enthusiastic reception. He sampled Japanese cuisine, took part in local festivities, and immersed himself in Japanese culture. Ironically, he was especially fond of the city of Hiroshima, whose destruction he would later feel personally responsible for. "Japan and the Japanese enchanted me," Einstein confessed. Einstein's family lived without a strong religious devotion. His father did not practice Orthodox Judaism, and the children were not raised with traditional religious teachings. When later asked by a rabbi whether he believed in God, Einstein famously replied, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the lawful harmony of the world, not in a God who concerns himself with the fates and actions of human beings." His interest in Jewish identity emerged only after 1911, when he became a professor at the German University in Prague. There, he joined a Jewish intellectual circle and became familiar with the ideology of Zionism, which called for the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. In the 1920s, a vicious campaign was launched against Einstein in Berlin. He was accused of plagiarism, self-promotion, and scientific fraud. These attacks were supported, often silently, by authorities. After Hitler came to power in 1933, remaining in Germany became dangerous. Einstein fled to the United States, infuriating the Nazis, who were unable to reach him. His summer house was confiscated by the state. Einstein renounced his membership in the Prussian Academy of Sciences and gave up his Prussian citizenship. Later, in December 1940, Einstein and his family officially received U.S. citizenship. The Holocaust would go on to become the greatest tragedy of the 20th century. Back in 1900, Planck had discovered that radiation energy is emitted and absorbed in small, discrete packets called quanta, not in a continuous stream. This idea laid the foundation for quantum physics and changed the direction of 20th century science. Later used Planck's theory to explain the photoelectric effect, work that would eventually earn him the Nobel Prize in Physics. Max Planck is widely regarded as the founder of quantum physics. Although Einstein and Planck remained friends for many years, they had very different political views. Planck supported Germany's militarist policies, while Einstein opposed them. In 1933, when the Nazis forced Einstein to flee to the United States, Planck criticized him for what he saw as a lack of patriotism and faith in his homeland. Although Planck privately disapproved of the Nazi extremism, including the persecution of Jewish scientists, he remained loyal to the regime. Even after his son was executed for participating in a plot against Hitler, Planck continued to publicly support Nazi authority. On May 10, 1933, a chilling scene unfolded in Berlin. Members of the National Socialist Student Union gathered in a public square and set fire to nearly 20,000 books. This event, later known as the Festival of Fire, was not isolated. Similar bonfires erupted across university towns in Bonn, Frankfurt, and Munich. This was no mere protest, it marked the official beginning of ruthless Nazi censorship. The regime soon banned more than 5,000 literary works, branding them as carriers of ideas alien to the German spirit. Among the blacklisted authors were towering intellectuals, Albert Einstein, Thomas Mann, Heinrich Mann, Karl Marx, Stefan Zweig, and Sigmund Freud. A century before these events, the German poet Heinrich Heine had written words that now seem prophetic: where they burn books, they will, in the end, burn people. During his visits to the United States, Einstein openly expressed pacifist views. If just 2% of the young people in a country refuse to serve in the military, Einstein declared, the government will not be able to suppress them. There simply won't be enough room in prisons. He was forced to admit that the devilish force of Nazism can only be defeated by force. Every day brought news of Nazi cruelty and tyranny. Einstein was deeply shocked upon learning about the deportation of thousands of Jews to concentration camps. In September 1939, Hungarian physicist Leo Szilard visited Einstein with a letter addressed to U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It is possible, the letter warned, that Germany is trying to develop an atomic bomb. We must prevent them. Szilard sought the support of the influential scientists to persuade the president of the seriousness of this threat. A year later, Einstein reflected, from a young age, I despised power, and now God is punishing me by placing it in my hands. Roosevelt responded swiftly to the scientists' warning. At Los Alamos National Laboratory, deep in the New Mexico desert, work began on the Manhattan Project, the top-secret effort to build atomic weapons. The Manhattan Project was launched, and even Germany's surrender in 1945 did not halt the work on the bomb. Einstein, who was aware of this, was deeply concerned. 2 months after the Nazi defeat, Leo Szilard once again approached the scientist, this time with a letter aimed at preventing the atomic bombing of Japan. Einstein signed it without hesitation. However, the letter was never read by the 32nd President of the United States. Roosevelt had suddenly passed away before witnessing the end of World War II. On August 6, 1945, while at his home in Princeton, Einstein heard on the radio that America had dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Eyewitnesses recount that the shocked scientist fainted. Until the end of his life, Einstein carried a profound sense of guilt for his role in the creation of the deadly weapon used against the people he loved. John Edgar Hoover, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, was one of the most influential figures in America. Having served under 8 U.S. presidents, he led the FBI for 48 years, transforming it into a powerful and omnipresent organization. Thanks to Hoover's efforts, American counterintelligence acquired its academy, state-of-the-art laboratories, and its agents were granted almost unlimited authority. Hoover not only dealt with the legendary criminals of his time but also compiled secret files on thousands of Americans. These special dossiers contain compromising material on presidents, their inner circles, and high-ranking government officials. Rumors claim these damaging documents were the key to Hoover's long career and enduring influence. There is a theory that Albert Einstein was also under surveillance by Hoover. The FBI chief's suspicions were aroused by the scientist's pacifist and liberal views. Investigators allegedly even examined the trash taken out by Einstein's housekeeper. During the Cold War years, Hoover seriously suspected Einstein of organizing a communist conspiracy and spying for the Russians. Albert Einstein found refuge in the university town of Princeton, New Jersey. Many distinguished guests visited him there: the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore, physicist Niels Bohr and Irene Joliot-Curie, the English mathematician and philosopher Bertrand Russell, and Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. During this period, Einstein said he divided his time between politics and equations. After the bombing of Hiroshima, he became obsessed with the idea of a world government that could prevent atomic war by regulating relations among nations. This project, however, was never realized. Another of Einstein's unfulfilled dreams was to create a unified field theory. Quantum physics explains the behavior of micro-objects, atoms, and electrons, while the theory of relativity describes stars and galaxies. Einstein persistently sought a universal law encompassing all physical processes but never reached a final solution. In his later years, Einstein lived in seclusion. After the deaths of his wife and sister, he almost lost his characteristic liveliness and wit. A neighbor girl often visited the scientist, and when her mother asked why she spent so much time with the professor, the little girl answered, "Grandpa helps me with math." To the embarrassed mother's apologies, Einstein replied, "There is no need to apologize. Your daughter has taught me much more than I have taught her." Einstein found solace and peace in the company of children. In his final years, Einstein suffered from a serious heart condition. In the spring of 1955, the 76-year-old scientist was hospitalized. Feeling his end was near, he asked for a pencil and paper. "I have some calculations to finish," Einstein explained. Several days later, on April 18, 1955, the brilliant physicist and citizen of the world passed away in a Princeton hospital room. The scientist forbade any funeral ceremonies. Albert Einstein's ashes were scattered to the wind. He began learning to play the violin at the age of 6 and has never parted with it since. Einstein found partners to make music together wherever he went and carved out time in his busy schedule for amateur concerts. When scientific experiments failed or research did not yield the expected results, he turned to music for comfort and inspiration. When asked what death meant to him, he replied, "It means I will no longer be able to listen to Mozart." Bernard Shaw, the English writer, believed that there have been only 8 great natural philosophers in history: Pythagoras, Ptolemy, Aristotle, Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, Newton, and Einstein. Among them, only 3, Ptolemy, Newton, and Einstein, created the universe. The main discovery. Einstein's key theses are laid out in the Special Theory of Relativity 1905 and the General Theory of Relativity 1915. The starting point was the assertion that the speed of light in a vacuum is the only constant quantity upon which temporal and spatial transformations depend. The special theory teaches the relativity of time and space, while the general theory explores their properties in the context of gravity. The genius scientist called his method thought experiments. It is believed he first employed this approach at the age of 16, imagining the view seen by a traveler moving at the speed of light. The only time Einstein worked in a laboratory was during his student years. In 1896, A. Becquerel observed that uranium salts emitted mysterious rays. Through their experiments, they discovered a new metal that emitted unprecedented energy. They named this property radioactivity, the radiant substances radioactive, and the new metal radium, meaning radiating. The energy was released during the decay of radium atoms. The next major achievement in this field was Albert Einstein's formula E equals mc squared, where E stands for energy, m for mass, and c for the speed of light. The energy contained in any object equals its mass multiplied by the speed of light squared. Considering the fantastically large numerical value of the second part of the equation, the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second, it is evident that even 1 gram of matter contains an enormous amount of energy. For example, 1 gram of nuclear fuel releases the same energy as the combustion of 10 tons of coal. If a cosmonaut travels in a spaceship for several days at a speed close to the speed of light, upon returning to Earth, he will be decades younger than his twin brother who stayed at home. This plot device is often used in science fiction works, and the described phenomenon is called the twin paradox. A stationary observer sees a car moving at 100 kilometers per hour. If he drives toward it at 60 kilometers per hour, it will seem to him that the car's speed is 160 kilometers per hour. But if he moves in the same direction as the car, its speed will appear lower. Thus, speed is relative and depends on the observer's position. Thus, Einstein understood gravity as a geometric effect of space curvature. He proved that gravitational force is fundamentally different from electrical, magnetic, nuclear, and other forces. The stronger the gravity, the slower time flows. The largest curvatures are called black holes. Having created a new universe, Einstein turned to his great predecessor. "Forgive me, Newton, you found the only path possible in your time for a person of greatest scientific creativity and strength of thought." In 1931, during a visit to America, the Einsteins met the actor Charlie Chaplin. The scientist was a great admirer of the genius comedian. Chaplin's success came in 1914 after the film Caught in a Cabaret. The touching and funny little tramp character created by the actor was loved worldwide. At the premiere of the film City Lights, Chaplin said to Einstein, "They applaud me because everyone understands me. They applaud you because no one understands you." Monroe and Einstein were idols of 1950s America. While Monroe was a symbol of beauty, Einstein was regarded as the epitome of genius. At that time, a popular joke went like this: Albert Einstein and Marilyn Monroe met at a social event. "If we had a child," the actress said to the scientist, "he would inherit my beauty and your intelligence. That would be wonderful. And what if the child turns out to be as beautiful as I am and as smart as you?" Einstein smirked. There is a version of the story that Einstein was fond of Marilyn Monroe, who supposedly reciprocated his feelings. According to contemporaries, Monroe kept a photo of Einstein on which the scientist had written by hand, "With respect, love, and gratitude." Albert Einstein and Franz Kafka were contemporaries. They both attended, during the same period, a famous literary salon in Prague where philosophical debates took place and chamber music was played. Einstein, who came there to make music, was a professor at the German university, while Kafka was an unknown young clerk working at an insurance company and writing on the side. It is possible they knew each other. It is said that once Thomas Mann gave Kafka's book to Einstein, but he soon returned it, explaining, "I couldn't read it, the mind is not ready for it." Marie Curie became the only woman at that time to understand the theory of relativity. A brilliant researcher, she was awarded the Nobel Prize twice. Curie and Einstein met at a scientific conference when each was deeply impressed by the discoveries of the other. Witnesses reported that during a walk, Einstein was so absorbed in discussion with Curie that he almost fell into a ravine. Here is a preserved letter from Einstein to Marie Curie in which he congratulates her on the 20th anniversary of the discovery of radium. "It is a joy to shake the hand of an honest person who, having gathered such a rich harvest, can proudly look back at the work accomplished. Kind and stubborn at the same time, that is how I love you, and I am happy that during those quiet days spent beside you, I was able to glimpse the depths of your soul, where a secret life unfolds. I consider Gandhi the most progressive among all contemporary politicians. We must strive to perfect actions in this spirit, to avoid violence in the fight for our rights," declared Albert Einstein. Although the scientist and the politician never met in person, they only corresponded. The philosophy of Gandhi had a profound influence on Albert Einstein's pacifism. In 1948, the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton invited the Japanese physicist Hideki Yukawa. Deeply remorseful over the fatal letter to Franklin Roosevelt, Einstein visited Yukawa and personally asked his forgiveness for the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The scientists promised each other to prevent the use of science for military purposes. After Einstein's death, Yukawa declared that he would continue the scientists' struggle to prevent atomic war. After Einstein's death, many scientists demanded a revision of his theories. However, to completely disprove them, an equally comprehensive theory would have to be created, which does not yet exist. Instead, numerous discoveries have been made based on Einstein's theories. This can probably be considered the best confirmation of the scientist's views. In 1964, the existence of the cosmic microwave background radiation was experimentally confirmed, which is one of the main arguments in favor of the Big Bang theory. Albert Einstein stood at the origins of this theory about the universe's origin. In 1993, a space satellite provided further confirmation of the Big Bang. In June 1976, at an altitude of 9,600 kilometers above sea level, scientists launched nuclear hydrogen clocks whose time was synchronized with Earth time. As a result of the experiment, the clock's rates changed, proving the relativity of time. Finally, in 1995, Einstein's research in molecular physics was experimentally verified. While reflecting on the unified field theory, Einstein was certain that both quantum physics and relativity were missing something very significant. He believed that the secret to the great mystery of the universe, reconciling all contradictions, was possible. At the same time, the scientist understood that the search for hidden truth is endless. "Science is not finished and never will be," wrote the brilliant physicist Albert Einstein.